He trained at an al-Qaeda camp in Afghanistan. After 9/11, he fled to a mountain hideout with Osama bin Laden. At one time, Khalid al-Jihani was a bomb maker for the world's best-known terrorist.
I get special training for bombs and the electronic circuits of the bombs.
Khalid isn't alone. In recent years, many other young Saudis have been drawn to extremist violence, committing terror attacks both on home soil and overseas. The Saudi authorities responded by arresting hundreds, while Americans imprisoned alleged Saudi terrorists at Guantanamo, Cuba. In time, the Saudi government faced a decision. Should they lock all these young men away for life, or should they attempt to reclaim them and show that reconciliation with society is possible? Khalid was to become a test case. A well-educated young man, he thought hard before joining extremist groups in the mid-1990s. He says he decided to act after watching videos showing conflicts in which Muslims had become victims.
You feel that you want to be with them, to be helpful, and you think that you are going to change the situation. I start thinking of going to practice jihad at that time.
As he saw it, he was joining a liberation struggle for Muslims. He left for Afghanistan without telling anyone.
I study these cases before I go. It's not something is random or I decide because of someone told me that nice story about it. I know that this will be hard.
In 1996, he enlisted at a camp run by al-Qaeda in eastern Afghanistan and learned about machine guns, rocket-propelled grenades and explosives. There were many accidents.
They were taking explosive training, and one guy, one foot and two hands was cut. And but I said, okay, this is how it should be. May I be hurt, may I be killed, but this is what I choose to continue.
In the spring of 2001 in Kandahar, he had his first personal meeting with Osama bin Laden. It was a kind of job interview.
In the places that he lived, there is no electricity, no fans, nothing, no air condition. His desk, it was like he sat on the floor.
But Khalid says he wasn't impressed.
In 1997, he was known for us as a fighter. But in 2001, he became as president or as something like a leader of the world or something like that. I wasn't feeling good about being with him. I know that even his speech is written for him by someone.
But by this time, Khalid was a wanted man back in Saudi Arabia. And despite his doubts about bin Laden, he decided to accept the offer of work.
I said, I will not be thrown in jail. I will continue what I start. Even I don't believe as before in this, but I have to continue.
Khalid knew that al-Qaeda had carried out murderous attacks on civilians, like the bombing of the US Embassy in Kenya. Nevertheless, he agreed to become a trainer. His speciality, remote control circuits for explosives.
It's not something that I am proud of. So I don't know how, I cannot change this, but I hope that these people, they don't use this against any innocent people.
During this period, he heard bin Laden talking about a new operation against the United States.
He was laughing and he said it will be far away of what they're thinking.
Bin Laden was talking about the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. After that, al-Qaeda came under heavy bombardment by American bombers. Khalid fled to Tora Bora on the mountainous border with Pakistan. It wasn't long before the Americans' chief target, bin Laden, arrived there as well.
We have in that night the most wanted guy, Osama bin Laden. So the situation is getting worse now.
After a month of bombing, bin Laden fled to Pakistan a day ahead of everyone else. Today, a disillusioned Khalid regards him as a coward.
He bring us to Tora Bora. He said, okay, we'll fight here until the end. Then he left the first one. For me, it was coward.
Khalid was captured by the Pakistani military and handed over to the Americans in Kandahar.
In Kandahar, the treatment, it was really bad. Hitting, beating, make us naked. I get hallucinated and I don't know where I am. Sometimes I feel that I am in a dream.
Then a plane journey, destination unknown. It took more than 20 hours. He remembers feeling warmth and sunshine as he left the plane, still blindfolded. He had arrived at the American detention facility at Guantanamo. It was January the 17th, 2002. He'd be held there for the next 4.5 years.
I said to myself, according to this treatment, if I go back to Saudi Arabia, I will kidnap American. Of course, you are mad and you're saying many things.
But his hatred began to dissipate. He says a key moment in Guantanamo was when he was shown a film of 9/11. Before this, he'd only heard radio reports.
I remember when 11 September attacks happened, the first plane hit, the second hit, we were cheering and we were happy. Then when you start seeing the picture, you feel sorry that this is not right, this is not the war. We fight as a fighter, soldier, or we don't accept that our civilian being killed by American or by anyone. So why we accept that for their civilian? Honestly, when I saw this, the people, they jump from the tower centers, I put myself in that place. I put my brothers in that place. If my brothers, how I am going to react?
At the end of 2005, Khalid was one of a group of inmates released from Guantanamo and flown back to Saudi Arabia. He was surprised at what happened next. He feared harsh punishment. This is what he found. Not locked prison cells, but inmates playing sports, doing craft activities, and going to class. This was part of, for some, a controversial experiment by the Saudi authorities. Its goal was to reclaim Khalid for society.
We want to change the culture of death with the culture of life.
Hamid al-Sheikhi, a professor of sociology, helps run the Saudi rehabilitation program for young men accused of involvement in extremist violence. Instead of further punishment, education is key to the new approach.
They are human beings, so we have to treat them as a human being, for them to have dignity.
The program brings in respected religious authorities to stress a central message, that killing innocent people of any faith is totally against Islam.
Do actions show mercy or do they show violence? If they are violent, then they are not justified anymore.
This is backed up with psychological counseling and job training. One aim is to create a sense of obligation.
They will be with us in the society, and we treated him well, he has to pay back for that. Otherwise, we will lose.
Included in the treatment, art therapy. Many could argue, including victims of terrorism, is this program too lenient?
We have sometimes some comments that's, oh, you are spoiling them. You are doing this and this and this. We said, yes, we want to spoil them, to make them indulge in real life. They taste the life of freedom, and that will help them to rehabilitate very quickly.
Osama al-Olaimi has spent more than 7 years in jail. He was arrested after his own father turned him in to the police.
It is one of the best things my father gave me. I'll remember it all my life.
He had planned on fighting in Iraq with al-Qaeda.
Of course I have regrets. I lost 7 years of my life.
During 6 months in the program, he completed training as a sound engineer, and he's now about to be released. He's getting engaged next week. He says all this has helped change his perspective.
Why shouldn't I make the day they arrested me a positive turning point in my life, instead of it being a day when I joined a suicide operation and blew myself up?
Osama is one of 370 Saudi men who've graduated from the program in the last 4 years. But after the recent terror attacks on Saudi soil, how can the country's citizens accept the redemption of terrorists? The answer is perhaps surprising.
Forgiveness is part of the culture.
Professor Hamid El Said is a consultant to the UN's Terrorism Monitoring Group, which is promoting a global de-radicalization effort. Not only does Islam have a strong tradition of forgiveness, he says, but Saudi Arabia's tightly knit tribal ties mean that the young men on the program are seen as family.
These individuals are looked at as our sons. That's what the Saudis tell you. Despite of what they committed, despite of what they did, they're still looked at as individuals who've been misled by more radical individuals like Al-Qaeda to do what they did. And therefore they're really looked at as our sons. They need help, they need assistance, and we're here to assist them.
But some former terrorists, those directly involved in atrocities, are not considered for the program, and others refuse to join. Many remain behind bars for long sentences. So far, fewer than 1 in 10 Saudis accused of terrorism have passed through the rehab center. And some question whether those in the program should be there at all. The watchdog group, Human Rights Watch.
People are being forcibly detained without trial and without charge, and that's the fundamental problem.
Human Rights Watch's Middle East director, Sarah Leah Whitson, says the program is tainted by being part of a system in which people can be imprisoned indefinitely without a proper judicial process.
Why are these people in prison in the first place? I don't care if they're giving me ice cream with cherries on top in prison. If I haven't been charged and I haven't been prosecuted, then I shouldn't be in prison.
In response, Professor Sheikhi says 99% of the inmates who are transferred from regular prison to the rehab center are set free.
They've already been to court. They've already been to prison. And now they are ready to be released. They finish their sentence. We can't add to their sentence.
Professor Sheikhi says that very few rejoin terror groups after release, although the program suffered a serious setback in 2007 when several inmates fled to Yemen and declared they were continuing violent jihad. Overall, however, Saudi authorities say fewer than 10% return to violence, a figure that compares favorably with most prisons worldwide.
Now it was the time to thinking about the decision, about the mistakes, and they have time now.
During his time in prison and rehabilitation, Khalid was sustained by his family. He received pictures from them and he wrote messages back. He says it was these family ties that finally helped him alter his thinking.
I said, okay, now I am going to change. I am going to care about my family. I am going to focus on my life. Kind of retired. I retired from all these things.
Assessing that he no longer posed a danger to society, the Saudi government released him after 1 year, bought him a house, found him a job, and even helped him with a dowry so he could marry.
Now I have good life. I have a daughter, and they have a new baby in the way. I have stable life, and I appreciate everything that's been done for us, that they gave us a second chance.
Khalid is still monitored and he's not free to travel abroad. But he says he finds a sense of freedom driving out into the dunes in the desert. Reflecting on his own life, he knows that, unlike him, many others never had a second chance to escape the trap of violence.